Please welcome our moderator, Carolina Chimoy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I would like to welcome our distinguished guest for this panel. Let me start with Emma Marcegaglia. Marcegaglia, sorry. Marcegaglia, CEO of Marcegaglia Steels. She was also President of Business Europe, President of Coffee Industria, and President of ENI previously. Also honored to welcome the Minister of Finance from Saudi Arabia, Minister Al-Jadaan. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Please take a seat here. Thank you so much. And Germany's Minister of Finance, Minister Lindner, should be here every second. We can definitely start. Minister Lindner will be here any second. We are living in a quite fragmented world. We've been hearing this during this first day of the conference. And one of the aims, as we've heard, of this conference is to build a common ground, or to at least get some ideas or where to find a common ground, right? So, Minister Al-Jadaan, if I may start with you, trade can, of course, help to bring countries together. What is your take on this? How can we get there? How can we find a common ground with trade as an instrument?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and for the institution, for Germany to hosting this actually very timely dialogue. And the key theme is actually telling, and it possibly answers your question of really building on common grounds. First of all, I am not pessimistic. Hello, Your Excellency.
Minister Lindner, welcome.
Hello, very nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
Pleasure. So building, I mean, the theme of this dialogue is actually timely, building on common grounds. I am not pessimistic, to be honest. I am always an optimist. And I think ultimately we will find our way. But we need just to recognize that there are basic root causes for this, which is, we heard it in the first session, and I would repeat it in brief, which is basically there is a loss of trust within nations, and nations who actually had, over the last 3-4 decades, developed and grew. A lot of them neglected part of their society. I mean, the fact is it was not really an equal growth within societies. That then called for these segments of society who did not really benefit from the growth to call for politicians to do something about it. You know, for example, bring back industries into countries, as we have seen in the US and other parts of the world. But also it caused significant distrust within countries. And as you know, this started basically very clearly during the pandemic, when there was a big scramble around basic health needs, vaccines, etc., where people saw very clearly that countries are closing on themselves and trying just to protect their own people, rather than possibly allowing the supply chain to help other nations at the same time. The last point, I think, which is clearly is a lot of politics came in also. So the war between Russia and Ukraine, the Middle East war, and there are a lot of other really boiling situations around the world that has also caused that largely mistrust between nations. What does that do? People try to close on themselves, try to be independent, and as we have heard earlier in the morning, you get into the independence trap, which is actually causing inflation, largely causing significant inefficiencies in economies, and depriving particularly low-income countries from technologies, innovations, and support that they need as we are today.
Yeah. Trust is key, definitely, and especially for the private sector, of course. And your country is doing really well in the non-all GDP. It grew by 3.8%, and it's expected to grow even more this year. Now, how are you building this trust with the private sector? Is there a secret recipe you would like to share with us?
Well, there are multiple ways, and I've been talking about this a lot, actually. Not only for Saudi Arabia, but I can give you the example of Saudi Arabia. What do you need really for sustainable growth? You need long-term plans, clearly communicated, with policy positions that are stable, predictable. Private sector does not like changes too much and too high political risk, if I may say. So stable long-term plans that are communicated very clearly is one. Second is public investment that catalyzes private investment, and that is really key. Three is public-private partnerships, particularly in infrastructure, where the need of infrastructure is growing too high and there is limited public money. So you could actually catalyze a lot of private money through public-private partnership. And then, basically, you need to mobilize your nation. What happened in Saudi Arabia is a communication of Saudi Vision 2030 was made very clearly by a very ambitious leadership who are committed to this long-term plan, mobilize the nation with it. If you go into Saudi Arabia today, compared to what it was only 7 years ago, it's a different nation.
Minister Lindner, he mentioned 4 important points: long-term plans, public investments, integrating the private sector, PPPs, and mobilizing the nation. Is that something we're doing in Germany?
I can continue where my friend Mohammed has just stopped. Well, the German challenge is to rebuild competitiveness. We have been losing competitiveness for more than a decade. We were ranked 6th in the global comparison, and now we are at 24th. And so we have to focus on supply-side measures, which means labor market, corporate taxation, bureaucratic burden, and the cost of energy. Our government has just presented a growth initiative which aims for improving these supply-side factors. Furthermore, we have started to invest in our infrastructure on an all-time high. So it's about 80 billion euros next year for grids, for the roads, for the digital grids. And so we are combining, mobilizing the private sector through social market policies with strengthening the public sector, and both combined will hopefully very soon bring back economic success to Germany. Because the turnaround potential in our country is very high, given our SMEs, intellectual property, private capital, which is available here. So we have very, very good starting conditions, but we need a turnaround.
How can you ensure, though, that the government will not only manage the risks, but also benefit from the returns? And is the private sector reacting to the stimulus you started?
Yes, the private sector is reacting. Just to give you an example, I've asked my team in the Ministry of Finance, why are insurances, for example, in Germany, investing less in asset classes like venture capital or private equity compared to France under the same European conditions and frameworks? And then we recognized there are some specific German obstacles, and we are about to remove them. I'm drawing a bill for a second future, financing the future law. And given our plan to improve the framework conditions, for example, for insurances and pension systems, the private sector has committed themselves to invest 12 billion euros more in the asset class of venture capital to 2030. So, and what I want to explain is, you ask, well, how can the public sector benefit?
Yeah.
Behind your question is the idea of paying more subsidies to the private sector. And I'm not in favor of that. I want to improve the conditions in a way that private capital can finance private projects with benefit for all of us.
Mm-hmm. One of the obstacles, though, is bureaucracy.
Of course.
We were also talking about that.
Yeah.
How can you solve that problem in Germany? Germany is well known for its bureaucratic jungle.
Yes, but just today our Normenkontrollrat, which evaluates the development of the bureaucratic burden, has published its latest report. And I'm proud to say the German Ministry of Finance is leading in reducing the bureaucratic burden.
That's good.
And from all ministries. And so I'm an example for the colleagues in cabinet, one time at least. And the bureaucratic burden coming from domestic policies is at the lowest level since 2012. Our problem is Brussels, frankly. Most of the bureaucratic obstacles are introduced by the European Commission. And, well, we constantly try to convince them that Green Deal must not mean to intervene in every business decision, but preparing elegant frameworks like the European emission trading system, given carbon dioxide price and letting the market intelligence and innovative people find the proper solutions to reduce our carbon dioxide footprint.
Emma Marcegaglia, you come from the private sector as a CEO. Do you feel motivated by the ideas that we've heard from the ministers? Would you be motivated, stimulated to invest either in Germany or in Saudi Arabia?
Well, it's difficult to say in front of the ministers, but
No, we're not being
I'm
diplomatic
kidding,
here,
I'm
are we?
kidding. No. First of all, let me say that I agree with what they say in this recipe that they said. First of all, the minister said that you need a clear vision. And I read, of course, Vision 2030. I'm also, thinking to invest in the steel business, and there could be a good opportunity there. So a clear vision of what we need, and we have it there. In Europe, I don't know Germany so well. I knew Europe very well. I know Europe well. I know also Germany a bit. I don't think there is this clear view because, for example, let's take the example of the Green Deal. The Green Deal, decarbonization is needed, no doubt of that. And we think also as business, we have a very important role to play. But the way it has been shaped in Europe is not the right way to do it because it's very regulatory driven. You don't put at the attention the technological neutrality. Here we are we have one of the most difficult challenges ever, because if you look at the previous industrial revolution, you always add something. Here you have to cut something or to reshape something, so it's very difficult. So you have to put technological neutrality. You have to deal with a cost of energy that in Europe is much higher than in US. Of course, I don't want to to say what is the cost of energy in Saudi Arabia, because zero, right? It's more or less zero. So we are very jealous of that. But I think the way, for example, in this case, Europe is facing the decarbonization is not the right one. Okay, so cost of energy. Another example, we all know, and so I go to the second part, which is the regulatory framework, which is another problem in Europe, in Germany, in Italy. Just an example. We all know that we need to invest strongly in renewables. I'm trying to make an investment as my company in photovoltaic. It takes at least 2 years to have, the authorization from the local authorities, and then at least 3-4 years to have the connection to the grid. in Europe, we don't have the grid because people, we don't invest enough. And then there is this NIMBY things where, you know, if you have to make a grid from, I don't know, from south of Italy to the north of Italy, it's a problem. Huh? So, but it cannot take 6 years to make an investment. Or another example, we are all talking about AI. Huh? AI is very important. In my opinion, AI could really enhance productivity in Europe. Think about also the small, medium enterprise. Think about some sectors like pharma or other, but even in my sector, in steel. But the idea to have a kind of AI Act in Europe before the others are doing things, which has always this kind of precautionary idea. So we regulate before because we are afraid of the risks that will come after, will kill innovation. Yeah. So just to say that we need to do that. And third points, which maybe I'm not completely aligned if you allow me, I think we need the huge investments. You know, the drug reports, but no, it's not the drug reports. The IMF are talking about, if we talk about the decarbonization, the AI, the revolution, and also the defense, we need a lot of money, 800 billion euro additional. So I think I'm totally in line that the real point has to come from private sector. No doubt on that. But I think on some specific part, maybe public investment, and this is, for example, a position of all business Europe, it's not only the Italian companies, also the Nordic companies, on some specific things, connectivity, infrastructure, AI, to have some targeted higher public investment at the European level, not Italian level, German level, because we need to have the single market, can trigger new investments and can support where maybe the market is failing. So just in that case, I think, but and then, the finish, I think we need a real capital market union. Yeah. Because if you want to have more investments from the private, we need a capital market union, we need a banking union. So I think the position of Germany is very important.
And Minister Lindner has a lot to say on that, I
think we need a lot of things. What I heard here is good. Yeah. The real thing is to execute what we need, because I think time is an essence, and we cannot just stay like we are. We really need to see improvement. I'm not talking about South yet. The improvements are already there in South.
There's a lot on what Marcegaglia has said on this bureaucracy, seeing risks instead of opportunities. What do you have to say on that?
I share the main approach. I recently met a CEO from a major technology company coming from the US. And she told me, well, the difference between the US and Europe is the following. We want to innovate technology. You want to regulate technology. Mm-hmm. And so we are specialized in avoiding any risk. But this means we are minimizing our opportunities for further growth, and we limit the speed of progress. When it comes to capital markets union, I'm the biggest supporter of the idea. Compared to the US, we don't have a lack of public sector money. We have a lack of a capital market which is able to finance ventures and growth in the private sector, because, well, it's split into 28 capital markets. Yes. And given the fact that in Germany we don't have a pension system with a capital, so there's a lot of room for improvement. When it comes to the public sector, I beg to differ. There is a huge amount of money on the table. I remind you of the program Next Generation EU, up to 800 billion euros. The annual budget of the European Union, it is really large, but the money is spent for old technologies. The money is spent to keep structures in certain member states of the European Union which are not sustainable and not competitive anymore. For example, the amount of money we spend for the agricultural sector. Yeah. So before we raise the budgets, probably financed by more debt, I would like to raise the question whether it's possible not to spend more money, but to spend the money we have better.
Yes, but as you see, it's very difficult, huh? Because then some countries
One has to start.
I know, but
Talking about innovation, Vision 2030 is an example for that. How has been your approach on this? How have you been integrating the private sector in Vision 2030? Because you have been one of the brains of this huge project, quite ambitious project.
Two things I wanted just to comment from what I've heard now and connecting it to your question. One is, obviously, this is about a global dialogue. So instead of talking just about Germany or Saudi Arabia or Italy, we also need to recognize that what happens in Germany impacts Italy and impacts Saudi Arabia and vice versa.
Sure.
And therefore, making sure that a global dialogue continues through multilateral institutions and maintaining and protecting multilateral institutions as a forum for adversaries even to have a proper place to discuss their issues and a lot of them are common issues that they need to discuss and agree. One of them is technology. And I think we all recognize that without a very clear environment that supports innovation and technology and then sharing information and technologies, particularly with low-income countries and some of the emerging markets, you cannot have prosperity in the world. So you're being too protectionist and being selfish, if I may use the word widely, is not actually in your best interest as a nation. Because what happens in other nations will impact you.
Sure, this is why we're trying to find common ground.
Just going back,
also, if possible.
Absolutely, and
I know.
we do continuously. And in Saudi, we focused on that. In Saudi, we said, how are we going to use our own competitive advantage in not only achieving our own interests, but also advancing the interests of other nations? In AI, for example, we looked way in advance of the current discussion of what is our position in AI? How are we going to contribute in the value chain of AI? And I can tell you, obviously, we are not the most advanced country in semiconductors, okay? So we don't have that competitive advantage now, but we would like at least to have some advancement. But definitely we have a competitive advantage in energy. And the problem is we cannot export our energy to Germany directly. So we need to think how we are going to do that. One of them is to say German AI companies and technology companies can actually set up their business in Saudi Arabia near a very reasonably priced energy, where there are multiple energy sources, not only fossil fuel, there is the fossil fuel, and there's renewables, and we have very ambitious plans in our electricity to achieve 50% renewable by 2030, and we are actually on the way to achieving that. So we have the energy, we have the land. You need a lot of land that is suitable for solar farms, and we have obviously the cheapest, as we speak now, we have the cheapest renewable energy produced by the private sector. So if you do that and say to Germany and the US and Europe and Asia, we will give you actually sovereign rights over your own data centers, so as if it is in Germany or in the US, then you are actually creating bridges. You are allowing other countries to use your competitive advantage, but also you are using their competitive advantage to benefit your own economy. that kind of sharing is important.
I'm not sure if all German AI companies should move to Saudi Arabia, but I'm in favor of the idea of division of labor and production. Absolutely. And to widen the horizon. With your cheap renewables, you are capable to produce green hydrogen and synthetic fuels to a competitive price. And this can really make the transformation of our economy and the mobility sector much easier if we would produce that domestically. And to add on this, I think you're completely right. We have to look at the influence of the global situation for our economic well-being, because it's closely connected. We can talk about framework conditions in Germany, but in our key industry sectors, we are so connected to the global development, we can do whatever we want domestically. It wouldn't make any change. For example, at the moment we have this difficult situation of German car manufacturers. And in domestic politics, the idea is presented, okay, we can pay subsidies for customers who want to buy an electrified car. And this is ridiculous, because the problem of our car manufacturers at the moment is the risk of a tariff conflict with People's Republic of China. So we mustn't think about subsidies by the taxpayer, but reducing the geo-economical tension to China. It's a very, very sensitive topic. And by the way, on the European level, decisions will be made on Friday, and I hope in the right direction, to de-escalate this risk of a potential trade conflict with China in the automotive sector.
Can I just comment on this, if I may? Just one quick comment.
Sure.
This is actually a very good example. So we are mobilizing the global leadership, the global societies around climate change, and the need really to deal with climate change. And then suddenly we find that there is a country that is actually getting more advanced than us in producing cheap climate change combating technologies, including batteries, EVs, etc. And we didn't like that. So it's not anymore the climate change challenge now, it is national challenge. So I think we can allow China to do what their competitive advantage allowing them to do, and in Europe we could do what our competitive advantage allow us to do, and the same in Saudi Arabia or Latin America. So we just need to make sure that our key priorities, like climate change, is not being impacted negatively by political agendas. I'll stop.
May I say
However,
something? Because I think it's very important.
And the legal framework.
Yeah, no, this point is very important, I think, because you know, I agree on the fact that I'm totally against war trade that are detrimental for all of us. But I think what happened in the last decades shows that we have been a little bit naive in Germany, in Europe, everywhere, because our dependence on China, or first on Russian gas. No? It was, well, what is the cheapest gas in the world? Russia. Let's go and buy only gas from Russia, not diversification, nothing. Where is the cheapest way to buy, you know, battery? In China. Let's do it there. So at the end, after COVID and after the war, we realized that we were very weak because all our value chain with the COVID and then with the war were completely, you know, broken. So I think in this new era, we have to strike a new balance, a better balance between kind of national security, which is needed because on some points we have to be autonomy. We cannot depend completely on raw materials coming from other parts, on technology coming only from one part of the world. But on the other hand, I agree that we have to keep the market opens, because otherwise, if everybody make himself all the needs of your supply chain, the costs are very high. You know, you close everything. At the end, also democracy could be here. So I think we need to strike a new balance between fair and free trade, because you know China is fine, but on China sometimes you see state-owned company with a lot of subsidies that come to Europe and disrupt all the market. So we need to have a fair market, a fair trade, where if there are dumping, you use the instruments, but where you are not against China and export because are just coming from export. So a good balance between some national security, but trade, but a fair trade that has to continue and to be open. Otherwise, Europe, which is a big exporter, will at the end have a big hit on its capacity to grow.
Still building the bridges. Before we open the floor for questions from the audience, I would like to have a quick round on how to deal with the mentality also in the different countries. It goes, of course, also with demographics. But do we have the society in Germany to approach this topic, innovation and transformation, in the same dynamic that, for example, Saudi Arabia is having?
There is further room for improvement in Germany. We are coming from a decade with a stable growth, very low interest rate, and well, we were able to benefit from what has been built in the decades before. And now we have to speed up. We need to introduce kind of a start-up mentality in our society.
How do you do that?
As a whole. Well, leading by example. And there is a need for a mentality change. If people think, well, the best for their personal life is working only 4 days a week, this has an influence for the mentality of an economy as a whole. And so we have to change this, and I'm thinking we are making progress there. And we need a realistic approach. I fear, when it comes to international cooperation, the German society partly is not realistic. We want to make choices on the global level with whom we want to cooperate because all our values, our way of life is shared. A realistic approach means we have to deal even with very difficult trade partners. We have to deal with them and to find common ground.
Bridges. Yes.
We need to find bridges and common ground. I think we have, for example, the both of us, a very open discussion about global policy developments and global tension, but there's common ground, and we need this common ground. If Germany would only want to deal and to trade with those who completely share our way of life, we even had a problem with Spain.
Yes.
Even with Spain. And so I suggest a more realistic approach.
And that would probably also build trust. Do you agree, Minister Al-Jadaan?
I do, and I think it is, in my opinion, there are actually a lot of common grounds that we can build on than what we think. There are, between Saudi and Germany, there are a lot of common grounds that we can bilaterally build on, but also multilaterally. I mean, it's in German and Europe interest to have a stable Africa. Africa is our neighbor, and we can work together on that. It's in our interest to make sure that the IMF and the World Bank are strengthened and operating effectively and are able to help the membership. That's a common ground that we are actually working on regularly. The same with the G20, where we are both members. There are a lot of common grounds there that we can work on and build on. People talk in the media and obviously are in the media, so always about the negative issues because that's what really make headlines. But there are a lot of good things around the world that we need to build on rather than focusing on the difficult ones.
Maybe if I may, I totally agree. Maybe we can also add the fact that in this, when we have this challenge in front of us, so difficult, so deep, it's very important that the governments, support themselves, that they have a conversation. But also I think it's very important to have a conversation between corporates, public and private. Some of the issue, things about AI, for example, understanding how AI will develop, I think it's very important also to have a very deep and strong conversation with companies who are developing this innovation. So I think governments, for sure, among them, but also corporates with governments to try to understand how to, to shape a new future where there is more optimism and where we can try to solve the problems together.
And a common ground between governments could also create trust for the private sector,
exactly.
right?
Sure, for sure.
I would like to open the floor for questions. Please give me a sign if you have a question. If not, I have a bunch of questions more. I was told that the young voices prepared something. Please go ahead. The students.
So let's try it like that. Hello, my name is Patrick. Happy to have you here. I'm working on electrification of trucks and also doing an online MBA as a part-time. And we, as a cohort of almost 40 young people, have decided on a quite interesting question about what's the role between private and public investments. And in this case, we thought about private investment is quite necessarily very important to make this industrial transformation happening. But how do you ensure that, on the other hand, still there's enough public funding, public investment available, besides keeping black zero, schwarz null, having enough for that, for investments in infrastructure, in education, and then also for the long term, ensuring that we combat the demographic challenges that we have by ensuring that people who want to have children are able to afford them, and they are not deciding against children for financial reasons. So affordable living, affordable housing, how do we ensure that on the other side, from a public perspective? And this goes for mostly for Mr. Lindner and for the Saudi Arabian perspective.
Well, unfortunately, we don't aim for a schwarze Null. The public deficit is 50 billion euros of new debt this year and next year. We are far away from schwarze Null, which was the idea of the last decade, in which had been invested too little in our infrastructure. Coming to your question, I think the role for the public sector is enabling development through investing in infrastructure. Electrified trucks and cars needs a charging infrastructure, and so we are funding this charging infrastructure in public-private partnership models, and I think this is a way forward we can do. On a more broader perspective, we are talking about the global perspective of economic well-being, more growth and trust. And I'm convinced geo-economical stability is key for transition, innovation and growth. And I fear there are risks for the geo-economical stability given the debt distressed situation in low-income countries, especially in Africa. And I'm very polite when I say that I'm concerned about the budget development in France and Italy. And Germany has to lead by example. We have European fiscal rules. We have strengthened them. They are more reliable. They lead to lower deficits and debt to GDP ratios in the European Union. And among member states, we have to lead by example. We have to be compliant with the European fiscal rules. And many domestic German observers are surprised when I constantly keep saying the constitutional debt break of Germany leads almost to the same results than the European fiscal rules. So you could beam me as finance minister away. You could find a 2/3 majority in parliament to get rid of our constitutional debt brake. You had to break European rules to allow more debt in Germany. And this is why I ask us to take into account spending better than more on the European level and domestically. I need one afternoon to find billions of euros more for public sector investment in infrastructure. I need one afternoon and a majority in parliament for myself. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Are there more questions from the audience? Yes, we have a question over there, please. We have a microphone.
Then you allow me to say something about Italian public debt.
We can get back to that during the break.
Super bonus.
Please.
Yeah, Maximilian Hoffmann, I'm president at the Foreign Council on Economic Relations. My question goes to Mr. Al-Jadaan. It's not really, or it's not fitting really into finance, but it's part of this. My question goes about BRICS Plus. So what do you expect within the next 5 years from BRICS Plus, as well as also what is the role of Iran under this umbrella? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll comment just on the previous question and then I'll answer this. I think to me, I mean, just because this is actually a very important question for a lot of people, the government role is not just to throw money at a problem, okay? Because the government role, if you are expecting money to be thrown at a problem, then you need to think about where is the source of that money. I think the government role is to try and use its key tools, which is policies, to help private sector and society at large. And I can talk about partnerships, I can talk about ease of doing business, I can talk about competitiveness, and His Excellency spoke about this. I can also talk about what kind of jobs are we creating in the economy and how can we direct our policies to create a better jobs for people, but not only job, but business opportunities for SMEs, for example, and entrepreneurs. These are very critical. They will allow him to get married and have 3, 4 children, if you have the right job, the right quality job, or the right business. So instead of focusing on sources, basically sourcing money through tax or debt, you could largely do policies that will enlarge the economy, which then provide opportunities for business, provide opportunities for entrepreneurs, and even enlarge your tax part of that economy.
I would say there's a common ground in this sense here.
In relation to BRICS, and I assume the question is directed to me because we were invited to join BRICS. We have not actually joined BRICS. We've been invited and we are considering that invitation. But let me actually take BRICS and take OPEC, okay, as an example, and take possibly other forums where we managed, whether it is in BRICS, they managed, they have adversaries within BRICS, India, China, and countries that have possibly common grounds, but they have differences, but they focused on their common ground. The same with OPEC, where we have countries who are in conflict. Saudi and Iran, for example, has been in conflict, but they managed to isolate that political side of their differences and just focused on their common grounds. And my call within this really dialogue is the more we focus on common ground within multilateral institutions or regional institutions, the more we are likely to actually do better for our nation and for the global economy.
Does that answer your question? We have one more question from a young voice.
Hi, my name is Edward Chan, coming from UC Berkeley. Another question that we had come up with in our cohort is around the ecosystem of startups. So both the risk-taking entrepreneur and the talent of engineers required for an ecosystem of innovation. How might you emulate the successes of Bangalore, Silicon Valley, Shenzhen, and do it in your respective countries, but also in general? And is there any opportunity for collaboration?
Can I just go very quickly? I think this is a fantastic question. Talents are very key. And I think there are advantages in countries like in Saudi Arabia where about 70% of our population are below 35. And we have taken the technology advancement very seriously within our population. And so you will find that we rank, I think, 5th globally on the young population awareness and ability and savviness in technology. This is very critical, and it is very critical to attract technology companies. It is very, very, very critical for innovation. But then that alone is not enough. So that, and then you need to collaborate. You need to bring technology companies, partner with them. We invested, and this is one thing that possibly other countries should do, is you will need to have some form of sovereign wealth fund that is commercially driven, but also helps you in your economic development objective. So that they can co-invest in venture capital. Commercially, they are making money, but also focusing on what really matters and what is your national interest needs in collaboration with global institutions. I'll stop there.
In Germany, the situation is a bit different, isn't it?
It is a bit different, and so I don't want to comment on Saudi, but for Germany, my perspective is there is a connection between talent, technology, and tolerance. Or in other words, you cannot split economic freedom from societal liberties. And given the German situation, to keep Germany attractive for talents to immigrate in our labor market, we have to overcome the rise of right-wing populism. This is really an economical risk for our development that talents could probably no longer feel invited to the German labor market due to the rise of this populist movements.
More questions from the audience? I don't see any. Oh, one more, and then we'll get to the closing remarks, because this is a very important takeaway for us. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Oliver Bilal from Invesco. My question goes to Mr. Lindner. We have now another attempt due to the Draghi report to strengthen the EU capital market union. I think this is absolutely key in order to get Europe more competitive. Now it seems still it's going to be debated, no consensus. What can be done to unlock?
I can assure you we are working really intensively on that topic. We've started with a Franco-German roadmap a couple of years now ago, and in the Eurogroup and among member states, we are all sharing the same view. We need progress there. I want to focus on what we can deliver very soon. So to give you an example, it's not possible to agree on one European insolvency law, at least not in my lifespan. Wouldn't be possible. So we made the proposal to introduce a 28th insolvency law as an opt-in option for the private sector. And this will lead to magnetism. All private sector players, they will opt for this 28th insolvency law for their products and services, and this will overcome the deficit of the existing 27 insolvency law. The market for securitizations has to be revitalized, especially for banks, not so important for the German banking sector, but for the Spanish, Italian, and French even more. We want to introduce a European investment product. And I could add issues of that agenda for the Capital Markets Union, but I will stop with one: reducing the obstacles for IPOs. This would really provide scale-up companies with the funding they need to grow and to get more market share and to enter the global market. So I can assure you there is progress very soon possible. We are working hard on this. It's not the fully flexed capital markets and banking union one can dream of, but it's really a progress we can achieve, and then we can build on that further.
We lost 10 years, right?
Yes, 20 years ago would be the best point in time to start. Today is the second best.
May I say just one thing to the minister, because he talked about debt? Just
sure, address that, and he already, in a way...
because I totally agree that France and Italy has to lower the level of debt. No question of that. But what I want to underline, and also probably that will also come from the for the students' question, I think, and also I see this, on my skin. Let's talk, for example, about decarbonization. Okay, so the challenges are so big. And, the need of new investments in, hydrogen, green hydrogen is still very costly. So in this situation, hydrogen doesn't exist. You can decarbonize some, for example, the steel sector that are using hydrogen because it's too high. So either we do something all together at the European level, or what will happen, and this is already going on, is that Germany will subsidize their own companies. And the other countries are not doing that. So, in my opinion, if we go like that, the real risk is that either we will go all to invest in Saudi, maybe the minister is happy, or, the risk is that at the end, as you said, the risk is that who has the money will subsidize, and then the single market will be broken. So this doesn't mean that we have to lower debt. I think that we have absolutely to lower the debt.
But the European state aid rules don't allow that every member state does what
they want.
Well, during the COVID, yes, you remember. During the COVID, yes. 70% of the subsidies were coming from Germany.
Yes, but the state aid regime now is not in the pandemic mute. We are back to the regular framework, and I think it's okay. For me, it's okay because it limits the ideas what can be subsidized. And when you are mentioning transformation, I'm completely committed to climate neutrality in 2050 in the European Union, of course. But the way to achieve it, we have always to reconsider if we are on the right track, to remove working technologies and to replace them with climate-friendly technologies, using public money and debt for this. This way would not lead to sustainable public finances, because the growth potential is not higher, but the public debt is higher without a higher growth potential of economy, and this leads to debt distress. And my recommendation is let's use the competition of ideas, the best technologies. Your plea was for technology neutrality,
yes.
And this leads to lower costs of reducing the carbon dioxide footprint. And if we introduce, Mohammed and myself, we are constantly talking about this, if we use the international division of labor, it can be even cheaper. For example, I would like to pay the forestry industry in Brazil to preserve their rainforests and to use this to reduce the German carbon dioxide footprint. And this would be an international cooperation which would help to develop countries like BRIC states, Brazil in that case, and it would reduce the costs of reducing carbon dioxide in Germany and the European Union. So let's find an approach to a global project which uses the global capabilities better than we do now.
Why is this kind of approach not possible now?
It is. In the Paris agreement and process, it's integrated, but it's not yet brought to praxis, and we should work on this. All international fora.
Thank you so much. Very briefly, I mean, you in a way already answered this question, but if we could condense this into 2 or 3 points, the 3 most effective incentives you see to mobilize the private sector for innovation and for industrial transformation. We can start with you, Minister Al-Jadaan.
Long-term plans,
Long-term
clear
plans.
vision, predictability, fairness. And 3, a very clear policy direction that is communicated. Manpower, talent, we talked about. And that is really critical. You need to make sure that you have the right talent that the private sector needs.
Thank you.
Strong investment in innovation and AI altogether. The cost of energy is very important. And I would say trade that has to remain open.
Minister Lindner?
Fiscal and political stability is key. In other words, trust and predictability. Uncertainty is the risk for all private businesses, domestically and on the global level. I think the risk of fragmentation of the global economy would lead to losses for all, for us, for others. And then a can-do mentality. I think pessimism, for example, in Germany, limits our ability to change and to introduce new growth perspectives. If we trust we can make it, we can find technologies, we can find solutions for challenges in our societies, then we will be able to deliver. So, can-do mentality.
See more opportunities instead of risks. Thank you so much for this wonderful round with both ministers and Emma Marcegaglia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.